phatLiterature with hosts Natalie Handel and Gabrielle David at the Langston Hughes Library. Coming up next on phatLiterature, producers, screenwriters, and actors Rana Kazkaz and Bridgit Evans discuss their unique partnership and the social activism in the literary community, featuring visual artist Nikita Hunter. Funding for phatLiterature has been provided by the Langston Hughes Community Library and Cultural Center of the Queensborough Public Library and its funders. Additional funding for phatLiterature was also provided by the Intercultural Alliance of Artists and Scholars Incorporated and its funders. phatLiterature's website is made possible in part by Queens Council on the Arts, with support through J.P. Morgan Chase Arts and Culture Regrants program, with special thanks to our individual donors and viewers like you.
To be or not to be? That's not the question. It's fact.
It's fact.
It's fact. It's fact. It's fact. It's fact. It's fact. It's fact.
It's literature. It's poetry. It's the spoken word. Diversity for all to hear. It's fact.
It's fact.
phatLiterature.
Yes, tell us a little bit about your philosophy. You, apart from the stories you like, tell us more about those stories and just the concept of the KAZBAH Project. Tell us.
Yeah.
Tell us.
Initially, our first foray into producing was an off-Broadway production of a play entitled Closet Land, written by an Indian American woman named Radha Bharadwaj, that had been a story that was originally made into a film commissioned by Amnesty International. And dealt with the politics of torture and human rights. And Gloria Steinem became a supporter of our work at that point, and she led a very moving discussion for us on the politics of the play. It was also at that time that Bridget and I learned a really valuable lesson in terms of what we needed to choose to produce. During one of the post-show discussions, an audience member raised her hand and said, I felt like I wanted to go on stage and do something. I wanted to actually affect change within this story. And that impulse to want to actually get out of your seat and then to take action is something that is a huge influence on any choice we make right now, is what are the stories that are going to inspire people to do that, to think that they can affect the world and make change in a positive way.
Yeah, socially conscious.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I notice is that a lot of your works, they're very socially conscientious. It's like a very careful decision was made, and I also find that you're bringing out the voices of women in a lot of your works.
Absolutely.
Was that a conscious effort on your part, or was it something that just...
Wow, that's an interesting question.
I think it's like instinct.
Yeah.
Like, what is the voice that you hear in your head, and that's the one that you answer.
And what's the voice that needs to be heard more?
But that's interesting also because, because of the kind of world that we live in, it's a masculine-led world. You were able to go bypass the stereotypical way of thinking and just go to that inner voice, which is very interesting because not a lot of women do that.
Yeah. Tell us a little about Venus.
How
you started that, where you went to South Africa with it, and you had readings here and other places. Tell us about this production and that experience.
Right. It sort of was a really great sort of stepping stone from the Closet Land project because, it started off with I was doing something at the Lincoln Center, and a director who'd seen my work there said, I'm doing this very developmental workshop of a play that was already produced at the Public Theater in the mid-90s, and would you do this role? And so I said, okay. It was like a 3-week workshop.
Right.
I did it. It was through Second Stage Theater. And man, by the time that show actually went up, this developmental workshop, I wasn't sleeping. I I felt palpably like this, some kind of spirit or essence of this woman, Sarki Bartman, aka the Venus Hottentot, was, you know, kind of whispering in my ear all the time. Late at night, I would feel, and I come from the South, and my parents are very, they believe in, I don't know whether you call them spirits, ghosts, ancestors, whatever, but it's matter of fact to me. And so I had these kind of sensations, like there was one time where I had my hands and I was thinking, what am I supposed to do? What do you want from me? And I felt this sort of cool thing sort of run across my hand, and it was so palpable that I looked down at my hand and said, what was that? Of course, I was the only person there, and who knows what that was, but it led me to do one more Google search after doing all this research on the role. And what came up that time, which had never come up all the other times that I had written those same words in, was an article in the South African Mail and Guardian about the very first examination that Sarki Bartman had experienced at the hands of these French physicians. And this is an overview, of course. This is a woman who, South African woman who in 1810 was taken to England. Yeah. And she was paraded as a freak in the freak show. She was called the Venus Hottentot. She became legendary on the sort of carnival circuits. And then later, a few years later, she was sold to a French physician who studied her basically to prove the anatomical lineage between Africans and apes. And after she died, he did an autopsy of her body and sold her remains to a museum in France, in Paris, and where they were on display for until like the mid-'80s. And so this article was the first time that they published the doctor's notes on what this examination was. And it was so clear in this article that this woman was horribly traumatized by these examinations. And I was moved at that point to basically say, oh, I think that she has never said this. She has never actually...
So to speak in her voice.
Yeah, said this is what happened to me. And so that's where the idea of dealing with the play on a much larger scale came to being. And of course the first thing I did...